So welcome everybody again. So we are starting now the second section of our 2 days webinars. And we are starting with the description, the real description of the tours and of the archaeological sites that we are going to visit, because this morning we talked about the Renaissance village of Ostia Antica, the pine wood of Castelfusano, and Ostia Lido, which is the neighborhood of Rome on the sea. But now we are going to talk about a very, very important archaeological site, the core of our association. I remind you that this is an event created, organized by Visit Ostia Antica, but sponsored by the region Lazio, with the support also of Visit Lazio, because I'm going to repeat this, there was a call for the promotion of tourism in the area surrounding Rome. So we are recording this. I remind you these two. So now I just briefly introduce our speaker for this afternoon, Margherita Bertoncini. She's an archaeologist. She is a tour guide, and I am sure she will perfectly show you all the treasures of these amazing archaeological sites. So, Margherita, I leave you the floor.
Thank you, Stefania, and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us also this afternoon. As Stefania was saying, this afternoon we are going to talk about Ostia Antica first, and then in the second part of the afternoon we are going to talk about the imperial harbors, the site of the imperial harbors of Claudius and Trajan, and then the Necropolis of Portus. During the educational that will follow this webinar, the people that will attend the educational will be visiting those places that, as Stefania was saying, are probably the most famous and the more important places of all the area. So it's very important for us as a cultural association of the territory to spread the knowledge of those places all over the world, or at least all over we can reach other people, and especially people that work in tourism, of course. So let's start with talking about Ostia Antica. So let me share some slides with you. Okay. Just a second. Okay, here we are. Stefania, do you see them? Do you see the slides?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so let's start with Ostia Antica. Let me just, okay, so I can see better the slides too. So as it is written here in our first place, so Ostia Antica, and you can see the map. So you can see the map of the old Rome. As you see, the Ostia Antica is that part marked with red at the very southwest of Rome. So it's about 23 kilometers from the city center, but it's still part of Rome municipalities. So Rome is the 10th municipality, and it's part of the city of Rome. So this was already said this morning, but it's important to repeat it. To get to Ostia is very easy because it's accessible by local transportation. So as with the metro ride, in 30 minutes, you can easily get to Ostia. The other two sites we will talk about in the afternoon, the Necropolis of Portus and the imperial harbor of Claudius and Trajan, are exactly on the north of Ostia, and it's Fiumicino municipality. So it's another town, but it's all part of a same park, as it is written here. So the Ostia Antica archaeological parts includes Ostia Antica, the imperial harbor of Claudius and Trajan, the Necropolis of Portus, the Museum of the Roman ships that was very, very recently reopened after many years, and the castle of Julius II, that Paola talked about this morning. So let's start. Let's go on. Sorry, just a second. Oh, here we are. So first of all, when we talk about Ostia Antica, that's usually the first thing I usually say to all the tourists that come to visit the site. You have to think that two things were different today and back then. And first is the Tiber River. So here you see an image from the Renaissance time where you see the Tiber River passing by Julius II castle. And that's the big difference. In 1557, there was a huge flood. And with that huge flood, the river changes course. So in the ancient Roman time, all the city was on the river. Today, we cannot see that very well, as we said, because the river changes course. The second thing that is different is the coastline. So back then, Ostia Antica used to be a city on the sea. Today, the sea is 3 miles or 5 kilometers farther, and there's the new city of Ostia Lido. So a little bit of history, or as I usually say, that's the boring part, but I assure you it will be very short. So according with the ancient writers, Ostia was built by the 4th king of Rome, Ancus Martius. But archaeologically speaking, there are no evidences that old. So what we think, or what the archaeologists think, is that maybe the first settlement, the first Ostia, the Ostia that was built during the monarchy time, was not in the exactly area where today Ostia Antica is. So there are many theories about that I'm not going to explain you all right now, but there are many theories, many archaeologists that think in different ways. What we have, the most ancient things that is in the site that we can visit nowadays, are from the 4th century BC, when it was built a military camp in the area to control the riverway, the Tiber River, towards Rome. Then, let's say when Rome conquered what is today all Italy, there was no such a need of military control anymore. So from what it was a military camp, the city turned into a commercial city with an harbor, but not a harbor on the sea, as we usually would see, but a harbor on the river, on the Tiber River. So big boats arrive close to the area. And then when the big boats arrive, the onerarie, the small barger had to exit from the river, unload the goods, and with the small barges, they can bring the goods inside the city and storage them in the warehouses of the city. So this system is good until Rome is not such a big city. But when the inhabitants of Rome, with the beginning of the empire, start to increase a lot, this system was not enough anymore, let's say. So in the 1st century AD, and with Claudius, and then in the 2nd century AD, a new harbor was built on a little bit northern than Ostia, directly on the beach. And this is what we're going to talk about in the next part of the afternoon. So the imperial harbors. What happened to Ostia with that? The time of the construction of the imperial harbor is also the time of the maximum, is the peak of Ostia Antica. So it's include the two cities, the life of the two cities of Ostia and Portus goes together. Then Ostia starts his decreasing, let's say a slow decreasing, faster than Portus for sure, but the city continued to exist even after the decreasing, even after the fall of the Roman Empire. The city continued to exist until the 9th century. In the 9th century, with the Saracen invasion, the site was completely abandoned. So the only few people that used to live there decided to complete abandon the city. So at the beginning of the 9th century, they looked for protection somewhere else. And the site of Ostia was completely abandoned. For this reason, because the city was abandoned and because nothing was never built on the top of it, those are the reasons why the city of Ostia is so well preserved. Nothing was never built on the top of it. So at the beginning, not the beginning, the end of the 1800s, let's say, the archaeologists could start the archaeological excavation to bring back the city into light again. Let's go on and let's talk about the stuff that we can see inside the city. First of all, I want to tell you something about the necropolis. Why am I starting with the necropolis? Because the necropolis is the first thing that you visit when you enter in Ostia. So when you enter in Ostia, the first thing that appears to your eyes is the street, this very, very long and beautiful ancient Roman street that correspond to the Ostienses Via Ostiensis, the Ostiensis street. It was the street that link Ostia with Rome. The ancient Romans had rules about the graveyards, where they can build the graveyards. And the first rule was that graveyards could not be built inside the city walls for healthy reason. So usually necropolis, so as our name, a word that comes from Greek, the city of the dead, were built outside the city walls along the streets. Why along the streets? Because in this way, many people can see those tombs. It's very important for the Romans to be remembered. So more people can see your tomb means you will be remembered. Those images that you see here this is a tomb. As you can see, in a tomb, there are many. So this is a tomb with the ritual of cremation, okay? So the body was burned and the ashes were put into the funeral urn, as this one that you can see below. And then the urns were put into those niches. Inside every niche, there's space for 2 jars. So as you can see, those tombs are very, very big tombs. We call them family tombs. So that means that in tombs, there were like 30, 40 people buried there sometimes. So family has a little bit larger meaning than for us. Families include all the family, but also the slave and the freedman. This is very interesting about the society. An image that you can see here below that I put because I like it a lot. It's a tiny, not a tiny, it's a tiny image, but that's a nice decoration that is one of the most nice tombs along the Via Ostiensis. As you can see, the different materials that are used to make that decoration are different kind of bricks and volcanic stone. And this kind of decoration help us to understand what's the kind of people that used to live in Ostia. People that work at the harbor. So they can be rich people, but it's usually the working class. So they can be rich families, but maybe not too rich to afford colored marbles. So they get the different colors from other kind of materials. But not only cremation was the ritual that they would use, also inhumation, so put the bodies in sarcophagus. Here you see two sarcophagus that come from the Ostia necropolis. Some of them are still displayed along the Via Ostiensis as you enter in the site, but the majority of them are in the museum. Today, the museum is closed they are preparing for the new layout, but some of them are also in other museums, as I was saying this morning, all over the world and all over the Museum of Rome. So here you see an image of two very, very beautiful marble sarcophagus in Ostia. The one on the left side, where you can see the family of the dead man. On the other side, a theme that was very, very used for the sarcophagus with the muses, the 9 muses. The 9 muses, the goddesses that represent arts. Then, walking along the necropolis, you will find the entrance. And the entrance was a gate, an entrance gate that today we call Porta Romana. The image that you see on the left is the inscription that used to be at the top of the gate. It's very broken, but trying to read in this inscription, we can get a lot of information. In the first line, we can read natus, po, and then at the end, usque. Some words that reminds us a very, very famous phrase that is senatus populusque Romanos, the senators and the citizen of Rome, or SPQR. Coloniae Ostiensis. In the third line, we can read that consul. According with the historian that studied the inscription, that consul is Cicero, and Cicero was consul in the year 63 BC. And so according with this inscription, we know that the rebuilding of the walls took place in the year 63 BC when Cicero was consul. This inscription, you have to imagine that at the top of the gate, flanked by 2 statues, the statue that you see on the right side of Minerva, the goddess of wisdom, winged. This image became so famous. I want to link with something that was told this morning by Paola, talking about Ostia Lido. It's so famous that is recalled in many buildings, modern buildings built in Ostia Lido, so in the new Ostia. So that's an image that it's a little bit of symbol of Ostia. And continuing along this street that we used to call the Via Ostiensis, but now entering from the gates that we can call the Decumanus Maximum, the main street that goes along the street east-west, we will encounter the Neptune bath. This morning, Stefania was talking about that. So baths are very, very interesting. It's an interesting thing when we talk about the ancient Roman world. In Ostia, there are a lot of public baths, some of them bigger, like this one, some of them smaller. Always, bath, of course, the main purpose of the bath for the Romans was for the citizen to take a bath. But then it's also a place where people can socialize. So in the picture that you see on the left, you see the gym, because usually in the public bath, there's an area for gym. Before bath, people were supposed to exercise. This is usually an open space where people can exercise, usually running, lifting weights. So not so different from nowadays. On the other side, the beautiful black and white mosaics that gives the name to the bath, Neptune. We can recognize Neptune with his trident at the very right, riding 4 seahorses, and all around him a parade of sea creature. Very, very close to this, there's also the other beautiful mosaic with his wife, Amphitrite. This is another bath that we were talking about this morning, the bath of the 7 wise men, another very, very beautiful mosaic, another very, very beautiful building, so well preserved. This was part of the frigidarium, because the 3 rooms that there must be in every bath are usually tepidarium, frigidarium, calidarium for warm, cold, or hot water. And speaking about hot, on the right, you see an image of the very smart system for the central heating that the Roman had. So as you see, the system is called the ipocausto. The floor is higher than the actually floor level, and is supported by those brick pillars. So underneath the floor, there's an empty space. There's a oven, and with the fire that will produce hot air will run underneath the floor in this space that you can see, supported by the brick pillars, and then through hollow bricks through the walls. That's the heating system that usually is made for the heating of the bath, but not only, because also domus often can have some rooms with the heating. This is another thing that is very, very interesting, and also very typical of Ostia, where, for example, in other sites, such as Pompeii, we see fountains with another shape, for example. This is the shape of a barrel. Is all you see the same image, the same fountain from the outside and then from the inside. Of course, water is very, very important in Roman cities. I did not say this before, but there's the aqueduct. The aqueduct provide water. Provide water for public baths that we just talked about, public fountains, and also private houses. Some private houses, those that can afford it. So the system of the fountains in a Roman city is very important, because it's where the citizen gets the water. How does it work? So from this opening that you can see in the image of the left, inside you have to imagine a basin, the one that you can see on the right side, that is all covered with hydraulic cement, because you have to imagine this fountain filled with water. So from the opening, you can take your water. So I can.
Margherita, sorry, do you
Yes,
able to?
I think so.
Please turn off your microphones.
So let me try with this. No, just a second.
Okay, maybe someone turned off the microphone.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
So I wanted to go back. Here we are. So we were talking about the fountains, right? So you can fill your jar with water from the inside, or there were 2 holes at the side to pour, where you can put your jar and pour it inside the water. And here we are, the theater Okay, continuing walking along the Decumanus Maximus. Here to show you, there's a small map, right? So you see the Decumanus Maximus, the main street east-west, and what is painted red is the image, it's the map of the theater, okay? So a very, very well-preserved theater built during the time of Augustus and then restored during the time of the Emperor Commodus, still in use because it was rebuilt, re-put up during Mussolini time. There's also an inscription on the left side of the theater that reminds us the year when the theater was, it was decided to be reused again. So the cavea, the area where people would sit, as you can see, is very, very well preserved or very well rebuilt. What is not there anymore, but we can see part of it, is the theater building. So from the first image, imagine like if you're sit on the theater and you're looking at the stage. The columns and part of the decoration, such as the marble masks that are on the left side, were part of the huge building that would be in front of you, that would be the building in front of the stage. Because this building does not exist anymore today, we can have a beautiful view of the square that is right behind that. So it's called Piazzale delle Corporazioni. There's a temple in the middle, in that seems a garden, and all around there's a portico with some very beautiful mosaics that represent, black and white mosaics, that represent activities of the harbor. So we can see boats. There's a very, very beautiful images of the slaves unloading the goods from the big boats to the small barges. There are amphoras, there are animals, there's people counting the wheat, so filling the modium, the baskets for the wheat, and level them to count the amount of wheat that was transported with the boats. So it's very, very interesting because it gives us a perfect idea of how the life of the harbor was. And those images are very interesting too, because the one on the left, you see the street that I was telling you about. So that's the Decumanus Maximus. In this picture is towards the Porta Romana, the gate that ideally we just pass through. And you have also an image of the theater from the outside. As you can see, only part of it is rebuilt. So it is very huge, but you have to imagine that even bigger than what is left today. Here you see another building, type of building that you have to visit in Ostia Antica, that are the domus. So there are two kinds of houses in a typical Roman city. Domus, that is the house of the rich people, and insula, that is usually the house of the middle class and poor people that we are going to talk about later. There's a lot of domus. Sometimes those domus, such as the images that you see right here, as not the perfect plan that we usually study when we study a domus, okay? Because sometimes they are transformed from previous building, okay? So for example, this one, the one on the image that you see on the right, you see the atrium and the impluvium and the portico of the Domus della Fortuna Nonaria. In this image, luckily for you, you can also see me, my colleague Paola, and our friend Julia, an actress that often works with us with the performances of the ancient Romans women or the women that were very, very important for Ostia and Antica and Ostia Lido in some of the performances that we do during our tours. So the room that is right behind Julia acting as one of the Roman matrona is the triclinium, the diner where they have their banquets. The name Domus della Fortuna Nonaria come from that statue that you see in the image that represent probably abundance. So what is very, very interesting about those domus here is also the quality of the decoration, because often, as in those domus that are showed here, you can see marble decoration. If you remember at the beginning, when we were talking about the necropolis, we said that not many people can afford marble. So if you can afford marble, and especially colored marble, to decorate your domus, means that you are a very, very rich man. And in the domus, you show your status also with the use of this kind of material. So if the first images are domus a little bit more well-known or not well-known, but in the first part of the city that are more easy to see, here you see some very, very beautiful images of some domus that are a little bit more towards the end of the city. So the images that you see on the left, I really love them. It's a mosaic. I know it doesn't look like, but it's a mosaic. It's called opus sectile. So it's made with tiles, made with marble and cut with the shape of the design that wanted to be represented on the floor. Those two images, those two opus sectile that you see on the left are exactly in the Domus dei Dioscuri, in the building, in the room that you see in the image in the middle. Then on the other side is one of the most iconic images of Ostia Antica. It used to be for a very long time also the image of Ostia Antica tickets. So it's the statue of Love and Psyche kissing, a very, very nice statue that used to decorate the cubiculum, so the bedroom of a domus. Right behind the statue, if you look closer, you can see that the walls are all decorated with colored marble. And this is a very, very nice statue. This is a copy, the one that is located right now in the domus, because the original, to maintain it, to preserve it, is kept into the museum. And then continuing walking along the Decumanus Maximum, in the middle, we will get to the Forum. So in the Roman time, all the cities are built following always the same rules. There's a main street east-west, the Decumanus Maximus we talk about, and then there's another street north-south, the Cardus Maximus. So if you imagine those two main streets, all the other streets are parallel of those two. And that creates city where all the districts are perfectly square. Now, all the Roman cities are built following those rules, with one exception. That is Rome, of course, because Rome started a long time ago with a bunch of shepherds and few sheep on the top of some hills, and then it grown and grown and grown. So Rome does not follow its own rules, but all the Roman cities always follow the scheme: two main street and square district. Where the two main street meet is where you find the Forum. And there are many buildings on the Forum, but at least there are three: the Capitolium, the Curia, and the Basilica. So let's start with the Capitolium. That is the building that you see right now in this image on the right. I don't know if you can see the little arrow, but it's this. This morning we were talking about the Capitolium again. So the Capitolium is the main temple. In every Roman city, there must be a Capitolium, and this is dedicated to the triad, the Capitolian triad, the three main gods, Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva. Jupiter, the father of all gods, Juno, his wife, and Minerva, the goddess of wisdom and war strategy. So the Capitolium is built, as usually all the Roman temples are, is built on a high terrace. So there's a staircase to reach the Capitolium. The main building technique that you will notice visiting Ostia is the opus cementitium, the cement and bricks. Bricks is the parade. So all the covering, let's say, the covering. So all the walls are built with casting of concrete and bricks in a triangular shape as a covering. But when we talk about the Capitolium, even if we see this huge building all made with bricks, we have to imagine it all covered with marble. So often you will notice also the horses where you have to imagine that the marble slabs were adjusted as the decoration of the Capitolium. On the other side, oh, this is a very nice image, one of the group that we used to lead along the, in Ostia Antica, seated on the staircase of the Capitolium. So with this image, you have a little bit more the size of the staircase, that is quite huge, and the size of the building. That you can also see in the other image with another panoramic view, taken exactly from the other side. So if this is taken, this picture is taken from one of the terraces before the forum, this is right on the other side of the forum, and this is taken from the inside of the basilica, the second building that I want to tell you something about. What
Margherita, can I say just a word about?
Yes, of course, please.
Okay,
please.
Okay. I don't want to interrupt you too much, but even this morning we tried, a little bit to communicate in order, to say maybe also things that you are not thinking about in this moment. Of course, you are saying a lot of things. It's a huge site, so it's not easy really to to summarize things. The one thing about the picture, because there are people sitting on the stairs of the Capitolium, but now it is not possible anymore. So this is a picture that we took some time ago, but now for preservation reasons, it's not possible to climb the stairs anymore. This is a pity, because this is something that we used to do, and it was not
exactly
to go inside. So it was also a typical picture to take at Ostia Antica.
Yeah.
And also talking about the Capitolium, I have to say something about a promotion of cultural heritage in Ostia, because we have to say that in the last years, especially thanks to the new director of the archaeological park, Alessandro D'Alessio, there are things going on for the promotion of Ostia Antica. For example, there is a part of the airport of Fiumicino where now you can admire some statues or fragments taken from Ostia Antica. So arriving at Fiumicino Airport, which is very close. I remind you that it's like 5 kilometers from Ostia Antica. Arriving in Fiumicino, you can also have these first great impact. And I don't know if there is another airport in the world Maybe there is, I don't know. Maybe our guests can tell us about this, but an airport where you can see and admire things like that, like archaeological remains. So, and among those activities to promote cultural heritage, the park made an agreement in a way with Hollywood, let's say. So they were to sponsor the new movie, the new Thor movie, the Marvel movie. Natalie Portman came to Ostia Antica to shoot a video. And so there is a video now online with a lot of
Quite easy to find. Is not
yeah, it's like I don't know, Thor, the new Thor.
that is the promotion of the movie, so it's quite easy
Exactly, and so you can have these I don't know, it's a kind of original point of view on Ostia Antica, in the sense that a famous actress performing with a beautiful dress, and she goes exactly there to the Capitolium. That's why I was saying this now. And if you watch this very, very short trailer movie, let's say the trailer, until the end, it's really nice, because you have a view on the Capitolium from the air, and you can see very well that behind the Capitolium there is the Tiber River at the sunset,
yeah.
which is really, really a nice view. So, I mean, this is something about a promotion and marketing, because we were talking about these in the morning too. And so you just go on, and okay,
Yes,
sorry for
yes.
interrupting you.
Yes, no, please, Stefania, feel welcome to interrupt anytime, please.
Okay.
So it does not seem I'm talking with myself. Okay, so I was saying this image is taken from the Basilica. Usually when we say the word basilica, we think of a church, but not in the ancient Roman time. In the ancient Roman time, the basilica was the law court, because the name means the shape of the building. So usually a basilica is a big building with a big aisle in the middle and two smaller aisles, both sides divided by columns. So that is a basilical building. Okay, so no matter if you use it as a church, then it is a church. If you use it as a law court, then it's a law court and public building. And the third and the last building is that there must be in every forum is the curia. The curia, you can see that it is not very easy to see here, but is exactly on the other side of the decumanus, on the other side of the basilica, and is the building for the local government. This is one of the places that is really most iconic about Ostia, is the Thermopolion. Why is it so iconic? Because it's one of the most well-preserved buildings. Not just the building, but all the street. We are along the street Via della Casa di Diana, and is one of the really most preserved streets of the city, where walking, you can really feel like if you are in an ancient Roman time, because the buildings are very well preserved. This building in particular make you feel like you can find someone that wants some food there. So the Thermopolium, as it is quite common to say today, it is considered the fast food of the ancient time. So why do we call it the fast food? Not because it's junk food, but because it's a place where people can go during their day, their working day, to eat something fast there, or it was also for takeaway. So it's not a restaurant where you will order, but there are some dishes, the meal of the day, let's say, and you can find the typical dishes that they usually are in a thermopolium, even if thermopolium would not be the word that actually an ancient Roman would say. You see the proper bar, let's say, and in the other image, you see an image of the fresco that is very, very interesting. Pointing at the fresco, you see our Stefania there, and pointing at the fresco where you see the image of, exactly, where you see the image of some kind of dishes, some kind of food that you can easily find there, such as some kind of carrots, beans, eggs, cheese, and that kind of stuff. This is just a small fragment, a small part of the frescoes that could decorate the old walls. Don't you never forget, sorry, that Ostia is the harbor of Rome. So it's a multicultural city. As a harbor and as whole the harbor city, we can imagine at the same time many people from different parts of the Mediterranean in the same place. So sometimes today in the touristic restaurants, there are pictures of the dishes. It is possible to find them also in the ancient Roman restaurants. And this is the other kind of house that we talk about, domus and insulae. The first image, the one on the left, is the Casa di Diana, the one that we just talked about, and that a little bit we talk about also this morning, because it's so well preserved. Look, you see the ground floor, you see the first floor, and you can also see the rear part of the balcony. But this is not all, because you can imagine those insulas up to 5 floors. So you can imagine 3 more floors. Usually we say that the insula is the house of the poor people, even if this is not exactly right, because of course the owner of the insula that usually live at the ground floor is a very healthy and rich man, of course. So as we were talking about also this morning, you can visit, when it's open, at the ground floor, the apartment of the ground floor that was probably the owner apartment, Casa di Diana, whose name comes from the fact that there are some frescoes with the goddess Diana, and it is a very, very beautiful house with frescoes, fountains, decorations. So it's not completely right to say that the insula is the house of the poor people. For sure, it's a building with apartments. The opposite of the domus, that is for one family. The other staircase that you see come from the Caseggiato, close to the bath of the 7 wise men. And I decided to put that picture because it makes you understand the idea that there were staircases to reach all the 5 floors of the insula. And this is the last. Of course, there would be much more to say about Ostia Antica, but we need to choose, okay? Ostia Antica, as we were saying this morning, is such a big place that not even all day is enough to visit it. So when we decided to explain what you will visit there, of course, we had to choose. And how did we choose? One type of building, right? So you have to imagine that there are many baths, many domus, but that's the kind of building that are more represented there. One of the things that me, Stefania, I'm sure you agree to, is most representative of Ostia are the Mitrei, because it's a city with a large number of them. So the Mithraism is a religion that is born in the ancient Persia, so the today Iran, and this is very, very ancient. is about this god Mitra that has some things in common with the figure of Jesus too. But let's not go too much into the detail about that. Thing is that that religion was brought by soldiers. Soldiers used to spend many, many years in all the part of the empire. So spending many years in a place, sometimes they start to worship the local gods. And once they go back to Rome, they bring those gods back with them. And that's what happened with the Mithraism. What is so interesting is that you can find them in many cities, Roman cities, but the amount of temple dedicated to that god that there are in Ostia, it's very important because of the reason that we were talking about. So Ostia is a harbor city and was really a multicultural and multi-religion city. Stefania, is there something that you want to add about the Mitra?
About Mitra is not really, even though, of course, as you were saying, it's a huge topic, fascinating. Okay, here you can see the Mithraeum we talked about, the one underground, with this beautiful statue that the original is in the museum, one of the most beautiful statues of Ostia, for
Yes,
sure.
I agree.
And on the right, also a good choice, because this is the Mitreo del Felicissimo, and you can see those mosaics on the ground, showing the several stages that a person following this religion had to follow, because it was a mystery cult, a mystery religion. So it was not open to everybody, but like in Freemasonry, you had to, to be admitted, and be admitted to every stage, and every stage is linked to the planets and is linked to animals. It's a very, very difficult and interesting topic, and in Ostia we have at least 20 of these places devoted to Mithras. I just take the occasion to say a few more things, and then maybe you can finish.
Yes.
Because I want to repeat another time, because
Yes.
we must repeat that these webinars are thought to introduce the educationals that are the core of this project. That means that thanks to the fundings of the region Lazio, we can host 10 people working in tourism in Ostia for like 3 nights and 4 days, from the 15th until the 18th of November. And you have to arrive on your own to Ostia, but once in Ostia, we will organize and pay everything for you and show you around, and let you discover the Heroes Shore, so-called. So if you are interested, please write us an email to info@visitostiantica.org. Visit our Facebook page, Visit Ostia Antica APS. So you will find there all information. I also wanted to say another thing, that you understand now probably that the archaeological park of Ostia Antica is very, very big. Okay, there are several sites inside the park, but this territory is so rich that there are even other monuments outside the boundaries of those archaeological sites, the ones that Margherita is describing this afternoon, and they also are they belong to the park in a way. So, for example, the Church of Sant'Ercolano, which is a small church hosting now the tombs of some of the most important archaeologists of the 20th century, I would say, the ones working in Ostia, like Guido Calza, for example, or architects like Italo Gismondi, maybe you heard those names, or Raissa Calza, that we a character also that we used in one of our performative tours, or Torboacciana, which is a medieval tower on top of what was once the lighthouse at the mouth of the river Tiber, or the maritime villas that you can see in on the some remains you can see in the pine wood of Castelfusano, or parts of the ancient Via Severiana, an ancient Roman road that you can find also in the pine wood of Castelfusano. So it's an incredibly rich territory, and I hope that tomorrow some other people can connect, because I know that some friends interested in tourism here from China were trying to connect, but internet sometimes gives some problems, and that's why we are happy to confirm that the registrations of those webinars will be online. So sorry, but I wanted to say something about the, what is outside the park too. And yes, okay. So I don't know. Do you want to say something?
No. I agree. I mean, it's important that I mean, those, as we were saying, is just a small part of what you are going to see if you join our educational. So it will be a very, very good and special occasion to see all the things we talk about now, but even more, of course, because as I said, this is just a selection of stuff. Now we can take a small break, and we will restart in, what do you think?
10 minutes?
10 minutes, 3:40.
Yeah.
For the other part of the afternoon, talking about the other sites, the imperial harbor of Claudius and Trajan, and the necropolis of Portus.
Okay, so you have to interrupt the recording.
Here we are. Here we are.
So maybe I can introduce you again very briefly.
Yes.
Okay, so it's just to say a few words on the second part of our webinar devoted to the archaeological park of Ostia Antica. These webinars are sponsored by the Regione Lazio, and Maria Rita Bertoncini will will guide you really to discover the ancient imperial harbors of Claudius and Trajan, and the necropolis of Portus. So again, I leave you the floor, and thank you.
Just to remind you that all those places that we are going to talk about this morning, this afternoon, we talk about Ostia, and now we are going to talk about the imperial harbor of Claudius and Trajan, and then the necropolis of Portus, will be sites that you can visit joining our educational. Just filling the form and send us an email to say that you want to join the educational. And once you reach Ostia, Rome, with the best way you decide to, then we will make you visit all those places and stay in the area and share this event with other people working in the tourism section. Okay, so I start with share with you some slides. Okay, presentation. Here we are. So this as we said at the beginning, the archaeological park of Ostia Antica includes many sites, some bigger, some smaller. This for sure is one of the second one as the biggest, let's say. And I really think we cannot consider this as something separate from Ostia Antica, because together, Ostia Antica and the imperial harbor of Claudius and Trajan, so the city of Portus, together, they become, I mean, they represent like a big hub that represent the whole harbor of Rome. So how Rome gets the supplies for his inhabitants, for his citizens. So the archaeological area, also known as Portus, the name of the city, Portus Augusti, is located in the city of Fiumicino, very, very close to the international airport of Leonardo da Vinci. It's part of the Ostia Antica archaeological park, as well as the other places, the other sites that we were talking about. It's just 3 kilometers farther, a little bit 3 kilometers northern than ancient Ostia. And same thing we said about Ostia, used to be on the coastline, but today the sea line, the coastline is a little bit farther, 3 kilometers farther, due to all the detritus brought by the Tiber River. A little bit of history as the beginning of the other part of Ostia Antica. So we did the beginning of the imperial age. Rome's supply system linked to the river of the port of Ostia proved insufficient, and therefore the emperor Claudius decided to build a new port in the year 42 AD. 3 kilometers northern than the Tiber River. 150 hectares port basin. So that's important. The image that you see on the left side, you see both ports, both harbor. So you see Claudius and you see Trajan. Trajan is the hexagonal basin. So right now that I'm talking, imagine not to see the hexagonal basin of Trajan, okay? So what Claudius built were those 2 curved piers, docks, and the small island with the lighthouse and a whole system of warehouses. Okay, the thing is that this harbor, this structure, Claudius project, shows some weakness from the very, very beginning, because even before the inauguration that took place during Nero time, because of a giant storm, more than 200 boats that were in the harbor get destroyed and get on fire because of that storm. So the ports prove itself not safe enough for the boats there. So this is the image of a coin of Nero time, because we said started with Claudius, but ended in Nero time in the year 64 AD, that represent what we were just telling about. So in the middle, so you see the pier, and then you see in the middle 7 boats. Then you see the image of the lighthouse with the statue on the top of it. You see on one side, you see some buildings that looks like porticos and a temple. And on the other side, you see this other structure that probably was the breakwaters. On the other, in the front part of the coin, of course, the portrait of Nero. This is part of Claudius' project. This is part of the porticos that were built right in front of the docks. It was very, very recently restored. So those pictures that you see right now are the pictures after the restoration. This area in particular is called the area of the colonnacce. And colonnacce, if we had to translate the word, that means bed columns. Why are they called bed columns? Because as it is very, very typical of Claudius' time, they have this shape that looks like not finished. But this is not finished, it's the style of Claudius' time. So imagine this portico on the other side that face the water. This is the other part that is exactly I don't know if you can see my little arrow, but this is the Darsena, okay? So it was water here, and is where you have to imagine there were the small barges there. And that's how today the Darsena look like. There's whole water and a lot of vegetation there. Let's say that visiting the site of the Imperial Harbor, there's a lot more nature than what we usually see in Ostia, where we see more buildings and nature. So this can be also a very nice walk for the people that want to take a walk in the nature, not just for the archaeological remains, let's say. As we were saying, the ports did not turn to be very functional due to some problems with the accumulation of debtors of saints. So for this reason, between the year 100 and 112, the Emperor Trajan decided to build a new harbor, reusing some of the earlier structure from the age of Claudius. So that's a very important thing to say. We know that Trajan, in some of the Trajan projects, such as Trajan markets, there's the hand of a very, very famous Roman architect, that is Apollodorus of Damascus. So we can likely say that probably this project belonged to him as well. So now you can imagine, you can have the whole picture. So what Claudius did was basically reused what was built, what Trajan did, reuse what was built by Claudius and uses Claudius Harbor as a huge entrance to an hexagonal and completely artificial basin that was built more inland, where it was safer and there wasn't anymore that problem with the sand sediment. An hexagonal dock of 33 hectares, completely artificial. As you can see from the first image, this is today a completely artificial lake still existing. So this image is taken from above. And so you see the city of Fiumicino, and a little bit more inland, you see what remains of the hexagonal basin of Trajan. Another very famous coin, that is the coin commemorating the new harbor. So the coin made in the year 112 that commemorate the opening of Trajan harbor. This coin, you can find it in the Roman Ship Museum that is opened, has opened very, very recently. After many, many years, it was closed. And the original of this coin, you can see that in that museum. As you can see, even if it's not so easy, you see the hexagonal shape and the representation of the building that were built all around the hexagonal shape that were mainly warehouses. With which we know the passage to them was closed. I mean, it was because they need to count all the goods that would go through the harbor, that would exit the harbor. Some images of Trajan buildings. So those are warehouses, and those are warehouses as well with some steps that belong to the pier. So the image on the right side, you see those steps, exactly where the steps ends, you have to imagine water. That's the big difficult about this site. Imagine the water. So today, you have this very, very nice walk along, I mean, in the countryside. So it's very beautiful because of all the nature. Talking about the nature in this image on the right, you see how the nature easily take the ancient ruins, okay, become part of the ancient ruins, and so much part of it that sometimes is not even possible to separate the two things. One exists because of the other. And so, but it's a site that is so important, but much more difficult to understand than, for example, the city of Ostia, because in a city is easier to talk about the everyday life. Instead, here, the use of imagination that you have to do is more important. And of course, you have to imagine water. Mainly, the majority of those structures were built on water. Walking along all the structure, all the warehouses, at the end, there's this part, because that's very a thing that is peculiar about the area, is that actually the lake, the artificial lake we talk about, it's in a private area. So these here are some warehouses, very, very huge warehouses, structure built with 2 floors, so very, very high structures. And today, those structures are very, very helpful, because for us, they can represent like a terrace where you can have a view of the lake today, the Trajan basin. When they are open right now, they were on restoration, so it was not possible to access those warehouses, but as all the restoration, I mean, it's for just an amount of time, a certain time. We saw this. So let me show you the image of the harbor with this fresco that was taken from the Vatican Museum, from the Maps Gallery. That is one of the most beautiful galleries of the Vatican Museum, where you can see the image of the port with Claudius construction, the lighthouse. Something important that I forget to say, but the model for the lighthouse, of course, was Alexandria Pharos, the most famous pharos in all the ancient world. There's nothing more of it. We know that in the 15th century, still there were some ruins of the lighthouse, because there's a pope that described to see those ruins, but it doesn't exist anymore. And then you see Claudius and Trajan construction. So you see how this fresco, made in the year 1580s, is so well describe all the structure there. Stefania, is there something you want to add about this site?
About this site, not really. I think you said a lot of things. I don't know if you are going to talk later about the Isola Sacra a little bit, maybe when you are going to talk
later with the necropolis.
Yeah, because Paola this morning talked about the Isola Sacra,
which is not a proper island, even though it's called the Sacred Island. So, I mean, if people are curious about this, maybe we can say something about this later, because I saw it written on one of the maps that you showed. Yes. And yeah, I mean, I think you said everything that was needed to say, and especially that this is not an easy archaeological site to visit alone. Ostia Antica is not easy alone because there are so many things, and Portus, it's not easy because it was once in the water, and now it's not in the water anymore because the coastline changed. And so also in this case, I mean, I think that a guided tour is really, really helpful. Yeah, I mean, that's it. So I don't know, maybe if you want to, if there are no questions, we can.
Yes, just give me 1 sec. Go to open the next presentation.
Yeah, about the beautiful necropolis of Portus, which is a tiny little archaeological site compared to the other two we talked about, but really, really interesting. So thank you for you okay. Have the map of the Isola Sacra. Perfect. Okay, so go on.
Okay, here we are. That's the next part. The next site I want to tell you something about is the Necropolis of Portus in the Isola Sacra. So the Isola Sacra that Stefania was just saying right now is this part of land that became an island. Why? Because on one side, there's the Mar Tirreno, so the sea. On other two sides, there's the Tiber River, and the only part of it, the only side of it that was connected with the land was then cut with the construction of Trajan, Claudius and Trajan harbor. So you see on the map that Fossa Traiana, that is an artificial canal that was built to link the harbor with the Tiber River. So with the construction of that, at the beginning of the Roman Empire, that part of land became an island because it's completely surrounded by water. Along the Isola Sacra, there's a street, the Via Flavia. So you see that represented on the map. It's the street that links Ostia with Portus. As we were saying at the beginning of this afternoon, the Romans had this rule. Tombs cannot be built inside the city walls. So the Romans thought that the best place to do that was along the streets, so that a lot of people can see them. So the Via Flavia became another street where the Romans can build their tombs. We know this is an image, the Via Flavia that you see represented on this map. That's the image, the picture that is taken from the necropolis that represent the Via Flavia. We know that it's called the Via Flavia that was built during the Flavian dynasty. The Flavian dynasty, it's a dynasty of 3 emperors, Vespasian, Titus, and Domitian, that succeed to the Julius Claudian family that ended with Nero. So it ended with Nero. There's a year of civil wars where there are 4 emperors, one next to the other in a year. But then with Vespasian, a new dynasty of emperors start again to rule the city. So because of a coin that was found in the street in the year, a coin from the year 69, what we call a terminus postquem, so means that the street must be built only after that year, we know that the street was built by that family, by the Flavian family. And as you can see along the street, tombs. So yes, the necropolis has tombs from the late 1st century and the 4th century AD. So they started building the tombs on the first line, of course, very on the street, let's say. Then in the 2nd century AD, because there was not space anymore in the first line, they passed on the second line. But then there was not space anymore. So in the 3rd and 4th century, they came back in the first line and they built the new tombs on the top of the ancient. So let's say that if we want to follow the order of the tombs back then, today, we have to start with the tombs in the rear part that are more ancient, and then the tomb on the front that are newer. In the area that the necropolis is today, so what I want to say is that the necropolis is bigger than the area that is today. In the area that today is a museum, an archaeological site, there are about 200 graves, 200 tombs. But of course, there are much more along the old streets. There used to be more, and there are more visible in some other areas close to the necropolis. Here we are. There are a thing that is very interesting is that there are different types of tombs. The types that you will see the most, when you will join us in our educational at the Necropolis of Portus, is the type that you see in the picture in the middle. So it's the type of tomb that looks like a house. It's called a cell tomb with an entrance, an inscription, a room with all the tombs, and sometimes also a closed area in front. But it's not the only type. There's one tomb, exactly the number 1 of the side, that is a pyramid, because there was someone that wanted to be buried in a pyramid. Maybe he traveled around Egypt and he liked the pyramid so much that he wanted a pyramid tomb for himself. Or there are some tombs, like the one that you see in the first image on the left, that looks like small temples. Okay, so there are different kinds of tombs as it is today. A thing that is very interesting about the necropolis is that we think of the necropolis of the city of the death, right? And so, like if it's something different from the life, right? But actually, what the ancient Roman expressed the most in their graveyards, in their tombs, is their life. So it's very interesting because through the images and through the inscriptions, the studying, the visiting of the necropolis gives us a lot of information about the life and the society of the ancient Romans, such as very typical of this site, this archaeological site. Those images that you see right there, flank one of the inscription of one tomb that represent the working activities of some of the people buried there. So in the one on the left, you see there's a man on in front of a small table, probably selling metal tools. And on the other side, a man making them. So maybe brothers or maybe part of the same family that were working together in a kind of job that could be similar. One is making the tools and the other selling them. The images that you see are copies of the original. For preservation reasons, the original are removed from the original sites, and today there are copies there. And this, one of our, and I put Stefania with me in this because I know this, and yes, Paola too, even if she's not here, this is probably our favorite tomb, because the tomb 100 in the necropolis, is the tomb of a couple, a husband and a wife, that have two very important jobs. She's a midwife and he's a doctor, a surgery. I mean, he practiced surgery because there are all the tools of surgery. But we love her especially. We love Scribonia Attice, that was a midwife. So in this, not the small, in the terracotta images that is represented in the image, you see Scribonia Attice during one woman labor, helping her to give birth to her son or daughter. We are very fond of her, because in one of our performances tour, our actress Giulia performed as Scribonia Attice, and Paola wrote a dialogue about her during her working day. Inscriptions, as I was saying, inscription is one of the most important things, because through the inscription we have a lot of information, even things that seems not so important. But for example, in a tomb where you see the name of the mother and the names of two brothers, but with two different family names, this makes us understand that she remarried and had a son with another husband. So it's not just for gossips. This gives us many information. I mean, how was society, how it was so common that women would be remarried. A divorce was not such a difficult thing as it is today. It was much more easier to get divorced back then, even because marriage was not something about love, or not so much, especially in the rich and the higher classes of the society, but was about alliances between families. So when you don't need that alliance anymore, you just broke the marriage and make another one with a new family that maybe is more useful for your purpose. It is very, very interesting, because in this necropolis, when it is possible, in the tombs that is possible, you get the chance also to see inside, and you see the colors and the beautiful of the decoration that is, should recall you the theater settings. So there are all those niches with round and rectangular shape that reminds the image, the settings of the building theater. You see colors, the colors of the fresco, you see yellow, you see light blue, very, very expensive, you see red, but you see as this tiny element on the other side that also stucco was used for the decoration. So often you see the part of the stucco left, or sometimes you just see the horses, that makes you understand how the stucco figure would be represented there. And mosaics, a tiny elephant that is in front of a tomb, and this instead is the inside of a tomb, decorated with a colored mosaic with some birds and flowers in a basket. There's as we said this about Ostia Antica too, there are different rituals for the to bury the people. Cremation is much more used, especially in the most ancient part of the tombs that we were saying comes from the 2nd century AD, but also inhumation. So put the body into a sarcophagus and then the sarcophagus into the tomb. So displayed at the side of the necropolis, there are also some sarcophagus. Those sarcophagus that are displayed there is to show how the sarcophagus were, even if we have to imagine them inside the tombs. So, and here you see a statue that comes from the necropolis too. Here we are. This is about the necropolis. I don't know if Stefania, you want to add something, to say something more?
Okay, so thank you very much for the beautiful pictures too. And I think that our guests now have some understanding of these tiny little beautiful archaeological site. I just want to underline that this is probably one of the best preserved necropolis of ancient Rome still existing. So it's not that famous. It's a pity because it's not easy to find tombs in this state of preservation. I mean, you are an archaeologist, you can tell this better, but as far as I know, it's something exceptional. Also compared, for example, to the tombs in Ostia. In Ostia, you have tombs of the same period, of the same kind of society also, these middle class freed men and freed women working in the harbor, etc. But there are no roofs anymore, for example, in Ostia. Okay, exactly. Here you have the tombs with the roof, and you know that the roof usually is the first thing that collapses, of course. And the reason why this site is so well preserved is that it was completely forgotten, in the sense that there are no sources, no ancient sources talking about this necropolis. Yes. And when Portus was abandoned, it was completely covered by sand, and it was found only during the reclamation. I mean, when the area, the swampy area, was reclaimed. This time a little bit later, so the excavations are of the 1920s, so beginning of the 20th century, because as you will see in the next days, the reclamation of Ostia, the reclaim of Ostia, sorry, the Bonifica, as we say, started in 1884, but then it went on and on for several years because the whole area was to be reclaimed. So, I mean, if you want to experience really a necropolis of ancient times, this is one of the few opportunities, at least as far as the Roman world is concerned, in the sense that there is a famous necropolis, a cemetery, for example, underneath the Basilica of St. Peter, a very famous one. But in that case, the basilica was built on top. So you don't feel like it was in ancient times. That means buildings on a street, open air. Okay, in this case, it remained like it was 2000 years ago. So something exceptional that you can really propose to tourists if they want to do something special, something outside the usual track. And finally, I just wanted to say that what we talked about today are the sites and the places we are going to visit during the first and second day of the educational. So we will start on the first day in the afternoon with the Renaissance village of Ostia Antica and Ostia Lido. And then on the second day, we will devote the second day to the archaeological park of Ostia Antica, to those amazing sites that are very big, that are located in different areas. So we need an entire day to visit those sites. And then on the third and fourth day, we will go outside the area of Ostia, but we will talk about these Ninfa, Sermoneta, Norba, but also Anzio and Nettuno, and also Lavinium tomorrow during the webinar. So I think that this is all I wanted to say. And I see that Paola is also here. So we changed the locations thanks to modern technology. And well, okay, so if there are no questions, There is nothing in the chat, so I suppose that we can stop here. I don't know if Paola wants to say something, or Maria Rita.
Yes, I totally agree with you about the fact that especially this site, especially the necropolis, because of the level of preservation, is really a jewel that is really outside the usual touristic visits. So it's really worth the visit because of the things that we can know about the Romans through there, because of the level of preservation that the site is. So it's really worth the visit there. The last thing I want to say about that, you said this morning, but I wanted to repeat it. If Ostia Antica is the main site and it was always open, those sites that we talk about in the second part of the afternoon, so the Imperial Harbor and the Necropolis, are open every day, I mean, except Monday, but every day, very, very recently. Before, until the park and all the efforts of the park staff to get that result, to have those sites open, it was very, very difficult to visit them because they were open only few days per month. So you have to check when there were the openings, and you cannot book your visit with so much before, because you don't know when even those sites were open. Now, with the efforts of the parks, and that is a succeed, I mean, for the territory, those sites are open every day. So it is possible to visit, and as I was saying, it's really worth the visit. So join us.
Okay. Yeah, no, really, I mean, this is something really important for tourism, as you can easily understand, that the sites are open on a regular basis. Because if you don't have this, it's very difficult to organize tour in advance. As you were saying, the tourists, they don't really, they cannot wait for the opening on the third Sunday of the month, you know? So maybe people living in the area, they can organize things.
Exactly.
But if you want to improve tourism, this is absolutely fundamental.
Necessary.
And so that's why, okay, we are very happy about this. And I mean, just take the occasion to see those sites. The sites join our educational, and I mean, I think that's it. So we can stop recording and see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, starting from 9:30 with a new program that Stefania just told you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.